Yay. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. We really appreciate you guys attending our speaker series. This is the first one of the fall semester. We have 3 more slated. Super excited to have y'all here. If you've got any questions, please feel free. You can either type them up in the chat box or there's the Q&A option as well. And then we can answer those after Anne goes through her PowerPoint. So I'd like to introduce Anne Wortinger with a whole lot of letters behind her name. She is a credentialed technician. She also holds VTS, which is a vet tech specialty designation. She's one of the few that is actually triple boarded in emergency critical care, small animal internal medicine, and nutrition. She's also elite fear-free. She's just amazing. She's a graduate of Michigan State University and got her specialty certification in emergency and critical care in 2000, small animal internal medicine in 2008, and then nutrition in 2013. She's worked in general emergency specialty practices and education. She is active in her state national specialty organizations, serving as a mentor and on a variety of committees and positions. She's an amazing faculty member. We're super fortunate to have her as part of the App State team. She's been with us for a little over a year. She's, however, what she calls, she's the chicken lady for almost 20 years. So I'm going to pass it on over to Anne and I will monitor the chat. So again, please feel free to type in any questions that you guys might have.
Okay, and for anybody who has joined a little late, I have a friend who is attending with us. This is my cat, Poppy. So you will see Tail, you will see me petting her, all sorts of fun things. So let's get started. Let me share my screen here. So we're going to talk about pet food. Why are we going to talk about pet food? Because everything needs to eat. It doesn't matter what else we do. It doesn't matter what treatments we're doing. If the animal isn't eating, then it doesn't matter. So the first and foremost, they all have to eat. So how do you decide what to feed? Because unlike people, animals are supposed to eat complete and balanced foods. So they are not going out and getting a little bit here, a little bit there, hoping that it balances out in the long term. As we can see from human medicine, our ability to do that with people is not real good. So with animals, we at least have the option of complete and balance. So what are you going to do to decide what you're going to feed? Well, first off, you need to look at the species. There is a significant species difference between cat and dog. You cannot feed a cat dog food long term. There are significant health consequences. You can, however, feed a dog cat food and they will be very, very happy and usually get pretty fat on it. You want to look at their activity level. Is this a very bouncy puppy or is this an older dog who doesn't engage in a whole lot of activity? And their age. According to the oversight committees, there are 3 recognized ages. We have reproduction lactation, which also includes our neonates. We have adults, and then we have all life stages. And just like with anything else, any food that tries to address everything from reproduction, lactation, neonates to adults is not going to quite be a good fit for everybody. So what I want you to not look at, not how cute their commercials are, how popular the food is, or a famous spokesperson, okay? I love Rachel Ray as much as the next person. But what are her credentials in making a pet food? Being able to make al dente pasta on TV does not qualify you to be making pet food. Neither does being a pet lover. I love my animals, and I would under no conditions formulate their food. I barely cook for my husband and I, not cooking for them. So how are you going to decide what is a reliable source? What are we going to check before we start making these decisions? Okay, I'm giving you two of my favorite sites. The World Small Animal Veterinary Association, or as we say, WSAVA, they have global nutrition guidelines on page 6 of the global nutrition guidelines, and there are a lot of pages. You want to know if the company that you are feeding has a veterinary nutritionist on staff, not just somebody they call once in a while when I'm on staff. AFCO Feeding Trials, the American Association of Feed Control Officials, requires that all foods sold across state lines have AFCO certification. The gold standard of AFCO certification is feeding trials, where you've actually taken this food and fed it to 6 animals for 6 months. Quality control measures. And what kind of research is being conducted? Okay, I'm a medical professional. I want new ideas. I want new research. I want a company that is expanding on the information that we have and making things better for our patients. So this is the link for WSAVA. You can also do what I always do because I never save it, wsava.org. Okay, the other one is the Pet Nutrition Alliance. And this has it's called the Pet Food Manufacturer Evaluation Report. And those questions that were on the WSAVA site, there's where the answers are. So you don't have to go and look. You don't have to call. You don't have to be doing all the research. You can go to the Pet Nutrition Alliance, go to the Manufacturer Evaluation Report, type in your food, and it will tell you, do they have a nutritionist on staff? Are they doing feeding trials? Is there research? Those are the sorts of things that we need. So those are my two favorite sites to be checking. And as a very short list, which companies meet all the WSAVA guidelines? Hill's Pet Nutrition. And I want you to notice, you do not see a lot of commercials on these foods. They have chosen to direct their money to research rather than marketing. So Hill's Pet Nutrition, we see Science Diet and the prescription diets. So Science Diet is their over-the-counter line. Royal Canin, Iams, and Eukanuba. They have Breed Health Nutrition, Size Health Nutrition, and Veterinary Diets. And then Nestle Purina. Cat and Dog Chow. They meet all of the WSAVA requirements. Purina 1, Purina Pro Plan, and then the Pro Plan Veterinary Diets. Any food from one of those 3 companies is going to meet all the requirements that we were looking at. Okay, I can hit the advance button here. So what do I look for? Because Maribeth said, I've got chickens, I've got cats. This is my grand dog, Josie, who's a little French bulldog. So what do I look for? Do they meet the WSAVA guidelines? So it's going to be one of those 3 companies. Do they conduct original research? So my cats were recently switched their foods. I switched their food. I'm asthmatic. Now, I have been asthmatic since I was 17 years old, which I can tell you was a long time ago. There was a new food that has come out by Purina called Live Clear, and it's in their Pro Plan line. And what it does is it interferes with the cat's ability to make the allergen that causes my asthma. I have 5 cats in my house. I also have 4 foster kittens. So I got a lot of cat allergens floating around. I started the cats on the food as soon as it was released on the market. It was April 2020. So we were all having fun at that point in time. I have been on a steroid inhaler since I was 17. Within 2 months of starting this food with my cats, who willingly ate it, no difference for them as far as they were concerned, I was able to, for the first time in over 40 years, stop my steroid inhaler. The Canadian wildfires have made me restart it this summer. But because I was able to decrease the allergenicity of my cats rather than get rid of my cats, and through research by Purina, I've actually been able to attend a CE that was given by the original researcher, which I'm sure most of you won't get the opportunity to do that. But researchers are such nutrition geeks that to get them to explain why they were doing this, what they were looking for, and how satisfied they were when it finally came out. So if any of you have any allergies to cats, I would suggest the Live Clear by Purina. And I want a company that supports my profession. So I want a company that is available for questions, because I get questions, right? I want to have an 800 number. I have email addresses for everybody at these companies that I can contact. If I have an off-the-wall question that's not addressed by either, something online, something in their product reference guides, I want to know there's somebody I can reach that's going to be able to tell me this information. So with that being said, now you've seen Poppy, now you get to look at her even more. What questions do you have about your pet's food? So let's see what we got here.
And please feel free, anything you want to ask, type it in the Q&A.
Otherwise, I'll just keep talking.
And she's good at that.
Okay. So a lot of my, the cats that I work with primarily, and including the ones that are foster fails, I foster underweight, poorly socialized kittens. So when I get them, they are, we call them a hot mess. They're usually dirty, they're underweight, they have poor muscle tone. And one of the first things I'm going to do with them is I'm going to put them on Pro-Plan kitten food. If for some reason they don't eat the Pro-Plan or we have a problem with it, I'm going to go to Royal Canin Kitten. Those are my two favorites. Then we're going to start looking at additives, prebiotics, probiotics. There's a lot of research in nutrition right now. I'm looking at the gastrointestinal microbiome. So one of the things that I look at in a pet food, I don't even look at the first 5 ingredients on the product ingredient list anymore. I want to know what the fibers are in that food, because that's going to be our source of prebiotics, are the fibers. So we're looking at things like tomato pumice. We're looking at beet pulp. We're looking at pea fiber. Those are the sort of things that are going to help the microbiome in the intestines. And it's already incorporated in the food. You don't need to do anything extra. And by feeding those sorts of things, you're going to make the inside of the animal healthier. So you get better absorption of nutrients, you get better digestion. And a lot of times, marketing will tell us that corn is a filler, that beet pulp is a filler, that cellulose is a filler, and they're not. They're there for a reason, that they've got a biologic reason to be there.
And Beth had a question about, is it okay to feed tuna to cats occasionally?
Yes, and as a treat, for any treats, and it's the same thing goes for us, as long as it's not more than 10% of their calories, tuna is fine. I also like tuna a lot for older cats who maybe aren't drinking as much as they should, that use dilute tuna juice. I told my husband that we have lost all of our cats that have associated the can opener with tuna fish, because everything's in a pop top right now. And it used to be every time I'd run the can opener, I would have all the cats come into the kitchen, because there was, maybe a 1 in 10 chance it was going to be tuna fish. And they would get to clean it up. So we don't have any cats that appreciate the can opener anymore.
What
And I've got
about,
Kelly
hang on,
that said, what's that?
wait. Oh, hey, going back to the tuna thing, she had a follow up.
Yes.
So she's thinking specifically of reveal tuna.
What kind of tuna?
It's called reveal tuna. I haven't heard of it either. I'm guessing it's a brand.
I just get the regular canned tuna.
Chicken of the sea.
Yeah. I would be careful with some of the like chicken of the sea mixes that they've got things in there other than just the tuna or the juice. And I would definitely go packed in water, not packed in oil. So I don't know. Somebody has to buy the packed in oil. They keep making it, but
And then Kelly had a question about her dog does not tolerate chicken as an ingredient in dry dog food. What food may be best for large breed senior dogs?
if you are looking for something that doesn't have chicken, Royal Canin has large breed dog. That should be a salmon base, I believe. And I know ProPlan has sensitive skin and stomach that is salmon based. I think they also have a lamb. It's difficult with over-the-counter foods to try to start restricting things because there is no regulations as to contamination. And when I'm talking contamination, I mean, peanut dust or, things like that, not talking bacterial contamination. But for an over-the-counter food, there isn't anything that they can run one food that is supposed to be chicken free and follow that right up with a diet that's got chicken in the same equipment and not have to clean it. There is no requirement for that. So if you truly need a restricted diet, that's going to have to be a therapeutic one, but try some of the salmon or lamb based foods and see how those work out for you. And I like the sensitive skin and stomach if we've got any intestinal issues going on, because the extra fiber and the omega-3 fatty acids will help with any inflammation that may be going on.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I have a golden retriever that is allergic to all poultry, as well as my cat coincidentally is also allergic to poultry. So they're on special, but I do have my golden retriever gets hot spots when she ends up eating anything that has any type of poultry in it. So I've got her on the Purina sensitive skin and stomach, and she does pretty well with that one. She's also 9, so she's a senior dog. I do give her a glucosamine chondroitin chewable. So I've got her on other stuff to kind of make up for and to help with senior type needs, where we need to help with the joints and that kind of stuff. So you can do supplementation. I give her fish oil capsules. She gets those. Those are really good. I will give her like a half a can of sardines periodically as a treat. And it's got all the fish oil stuff, and both her and the cat like that too.
If it's not in a Caesar salad, I have nothing to do with sardines. So Kelly wants to know if senior dogs have a different formulation, and the answer to that is no. According to AFCO, so the guide that we get is the American Association of Feed Control Officials, reproduction and lactation, kittens and adults, or kittens and puppies and adults. Those are the only 3 that are recognized. Geriatric is not a recognized category because some geriatric dogs are still very active and running around. Some are very arthritic. Some are very overweight. We really need to tailor what we're recommending for our older dogs based on their needs. So Jenna's just saying that she uses a sensitive skin and stomach because that also provides golden retriever joint problems. That so it really depends. And I transition my kittens to adult food at about 6 to 8 months. But my adult cats, I don't transition to an alternate, and I won't say geriatric diet because there isn't a geriatric formula. But I'm not going to alter their food unless we've got an issue. So are they losing weight? Are they losing muscle mass? Are they not eating as well? Do we have mobility issues? things like that is what I'm looking at. And then that will help you refine what you need to switch to. At this point, you should definitely have your veterinarian involved in that decision. Talk to the team about what you're feeding, what your goals are, what you want to see, and what's happening, so that they can help you determine what's going to be the best food. Anybody who's walked down the pet food aisles, there are gazillions of choices, aren't there? Just because there's all these choices doesn't mean that they're all equal. So I'm sure when you guys go out, and I live outside Metro Detroit, so we use a lot of car analogies. If you go out and you buy a car, you can buy a Chevrolet, except for right now because they're on strike. But you can buy a Chevrolet, or you can buy a Cadillac. They're all going to have 4 wheels, 4 doors, steering wheel. What's going to be the difference? Well, maybe their performance on the crash test. I would expect my Caddy to perform a little bit better than my Chevy on a crash test. Those are going to be government tests. Maybe the materials are going to be different. So just because they all have the same equipment list doesn't mean the quality of those pieces of equipment are the same. We would expect the Cadillac to be more expensive, wouldn't we? Chevy's going to get you there. So what are your expectations? What are you feeding for? What I feed for, I want optimal health and I want longevity. So there are, we've got a number of studies that have looked at longevity and how nutrition can affect the long-term life of our animals. And we have been able to show that in dogs, feeding 25% less than would be normal, on average, increase the lifespan by 18 months, 15 to 18 months. If just feeding my animals a little less food means I can keep them for another 1.5 years, got me there. There was a study done in cats looking at modifying the vitamins and fibers in their foods as well as the protein content. And again, we looked at almost 2 years increased longevity in the cats. So average lifespan of a cat is 10 to 12 years. Average lifespan of a dog really depends on what breed you've got. But if we're looking at mutts, usually about 8 to 10 years. So if I can get a 10% increase in that, just by feeding them, something you're going to do anyways, that's going to be something I'm looking at. And that's the research that I was talking about. My hope, and I know it is unrealistic, nobody else is going to get as geeked out about this research as I am. But it shows up in our professional magazines. It shows up in our conferences as to what new things are out on the market and what we're being able to offer. That these are conversations you need to be having with your veterinary professionals as to, is it time to change to a higher calorie food, a lower calorie food, a low fat food, a high fat food, whatever you're looking at. So the long answer is senior dogs do not have a different formulation.
There's a couple questions, but I also, real quick, I wanted to go back. The Reveal, it's a grain-free cat food that ingredients are just tuna fillet and fish broth. But but the fact that it states grain-free, I wonder if you might touch on that, because that's a pretty hot topic in regards to grain-free and people thinking that they need to purchase that. And then we'll get back to the questions that are typed in too.
Hey, as far as the Reveal cat food, look at the AFCO certification. If it isn't certified by feeding trials, I would not feed it. I don't care what the marketing says. Feeding cats an all fish diet, depending on if the fish is cooked or uncooked, fish have an enzyme called thiaminase that is destroyed through cooking. If you are feeding raw fish, and in Seattle, that is something that is used commonly on the West Coast, cats can have significant thiamine deficiencies. Thiamine is one of the B vitamins that is required for energy production. So you can get significant health problems associated with that. So check the AAFCO certification, check the WSAVA guidelines, check the Pet Nutrition Alliance, and see if they are meeting those requirements.
So
Jen asked about grain-free diets. Starting in 2018, so this has been going on for 5 years, veterinarians were seeing a significant increase in the incidence of a condition called dilated cardiomyopathy, which is an enlargement of the heart to the point where they go into heart failure. We were able to trace this 90% of the time to being caused by grain-free diets or boutique foods. Okay. First off, these foods are not meeting the WSAVA guidelines and do not have feeding trials. If you go to the FDA site, and I can get the address, but if you go to FDA, type in dilated cardiomyopathy and grain-free, they will tell you what foods have been implicated. And for the FDA to point out specific foods is extremely unusual. The fact that they listed a number, there were about 20 foods currently on the market, have not changed their formulations. We are still seeing dogs dying from this. There is no nutritional reason to not feed grains to dogs. None. Dogs do not have allergies typically to grains. Most allergies are to proteins, which are going to be the animals. We have been able to show that by using the exotic meats, so kangaroo and wombat and whatever else, they are not nutritionally superior to foods that we have been researching for the past 100 years: chicken, beef, lamb, sometimes pork. We know what those foods got in it. We know how they're metabolized. A lot of those things we don't know. And if you are just doing, most of these foods are doing what's called a chemical analysis. So they're checking to see if the chemicals, the nutrients, are in the food in the amount that AAFCO requires. If you check the label, it will not say this food has been approved for an AAFCO feeding trial. It will not say that. It'll say that, testing has shown that blah, 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 it meets AAFCO. The problem with that is, if you do a chemical analysis, that does not tell you how that nutrient behaves in that animal's intestines. Okay, some of you are allergic to strawberries. We could analyze our Pop-Tarts and find out how much strawberry is in there. Is it going to be enough that it's going to cause an allergic reaction for you or not? Is it strawberry flavoring, or has it got some strawberry puree in there? Same thing with people that have got shellfish allergies or anything like that. Most allergies, food allergies in animals, we're going to actually see skin problems, not GI problems. So animals, unlike people, will get redness of their ears. They will get fur loss on their faces. They will lose hair on their bellies. They will get red splotches. Some dogs, lose the hair on the back of their legs. That's what we typically see associated with food allergies. And we're going to feed a restricted diet if that's the case. So grain-free is not recommended. And if you stick with the WSAVA brands, zero of the WSAVA brands have been reported to have any cases of dilated cardiomyopathy in dogs. None. So stick with the Wasaba brands, check with the Pet Nutrition Alliance, and you should be fine. If you are feeding a grain-free food now, our recommendation is to switch it immediately. And if your animal has got exercise intolerance, coughing, difficulty breathing, anything else, needs to see a veterinarian immediately. Because those are signs of heart failure that we need to get ahead of. This does kill dogs.
There's a question about, does the same hold true for cats as far as grain-free?
Not necessarily. Cats can eat grains. One of the big things that we hear is that cats can't eat carbohydrates. Any popcorn stealing cat will tell you they can eat carbohydrates. They produce the enzyme that breaks down carbohydrates. They have the absorptive sites in the intestine. But feeding a cat a grain-free diet is not going to have the same consequences. Most of the cases of dilated cardiomyopathy in cats have been breed associated, and there are certain breeds of dogs that we see this in more commonly. Maine Coon cats have a high incidence of cardiomyopathy, and that's where checking with a breeder would be your best idea before you get a Maine Coon. But grain-free in cats does not have the same market share and does not have the same consequences that we're seeing in dogs.
Next question is what age should a puppy switch from puppy food to adult dog food?
Depends on the breed. We usually recommend that when they are at 75% of their anticipated adult size. So if you've got a purebred dog and you know that normal weight for a female purebred dog of that breed is 50 to 55 pounds. So when that dog gets to about 35, 40 pounds, we would switch. That's usually going to be 10 to 12 months. Now, if you've got a pit bull, pit bulls can be anywhere from 20 pounds up to 100 pounds. Kind of hard to tell what's going to be anticipated. 10 to 12 months is usually safe unless you've got a large breed dog. If you've got a large breed dog, so a dog that's anticipated over 100 pounds, adult weight, we're usually going to go 12 to maybe 15 months because they've got a lot more growing time involved. Also, if you get an animal, like from a shelter, that has been neutered young, that will affect how long we're going to feed puppy food. Neutering, just the surgery itself, decreases their energy requirements by 25%. Next day, get those hormones out of the system, boom, energy requirements go down. For most young neutered animals, this isn't a big problem because they're still growing, still full of energy. We don't see a significant change. If you've got a large breed dog, those that are 75 and over, the recommendation now is to wait until 1.5 to 2 years for all the long bones to finish growing before we look at changing things. We are doing delayed neutering for a lot of the animals that are not adopted out of shelters. Shelters do it because people don't come back in. So we do it when we can. But neutering after sexual maturity has been associated with less orthopedic problems. So if you want to be a responsible pet owner, neuter them after they're done growing, so 12 to 18 months, and make sure that you decrease the amount of adult food that you're feeding at that time so that we don't get fat adult dogs when we're done.
So kind of along the same lines is, when do you transition adult to senior in large breed dogs?
It really depends on the dog. If you have got a dog who is still active, that is still engaging, that is still mentally alert, whatever food you're feeding is doing good. ProPlan has a diet called Bright Minds that has been shown to help some of our dogs that are showing a cognitive decline. Bright Minds also has increased calories in it because some of our older dogs, especially with the cognitive decline, don't eat as much as they should. So if we need to increase the amount of calories that they're getting because they're not eating enough, then we're going to do that. Some of our dogs, cognitively, they're still doing great, but they're not moving around as much, so they start gaining weight. So we're going to go for a lower calorie. That it really is going to depend on the dog. And having that discussion with your veterinarian every year. Has the weight changed? Has their activity level changed? Are you noticing cognitive problems? If the cognitive problems get severe, we also have a therapeutic diet that can be used for some of the neuro problems. So it depends.
Next question, and this is one I'm very, very guilty of, is recommendations or concerns about feeding dogs and cats human food. That's a hot topic, and I'm guilty of it.
One, make sure that they are safe to feed. So no macadamia nuts, no onions, no garlic, no chocolate, no avocados. If you want to give, a piece of chicken, I would stick with the meat, not the gristle. Veggies are usually fine. So, I've had patients where frozen green beans were their favorite treat. Well, it's kind of hard to overdo that. Carrots, baby carrots. Lots of dogs go nuts over baby carrots. Be careful with things like that, especially with our smaller dogs, because we can get esophageal obstruction, which we don't want. But we don't want to be feeding, whipped cream and cake crusts and, cakes and things like that. They don't need that level. We don't need that level of sugar either, but they don't need that level of sugar. And the treats should never be more than 10% of the diet. Otherwise, you are at risk of unbalancing a balanced diet by adding stuff into it. So make sure it's safe. Poison control has a really good handout on things that should not be fed.
But the occasional puppuccino from Starbucks is okay, just saying.
Puppuccino, as long as we're doing it once a week and not twice a day, which is what Daffy would like.
She would. She gets it once a week, once every 2 weeks.
Yeah. There's no shame in treats. They just need to, we're not going to. The cat would probably like the same size puppuccino as the dog. That's probably not our best idea. I had one of my cats that thought that the only use of bowls in the house was for ice cream. And for years, I could tell you what the cat's favorite ice cream was because that's what we always bought. And if you were eating soup or you were eating cereal, she would give you this very disgusted look that you were disappointing her because that was not an ice cream bowl for her to clean. Lots of cats eat yogurt. Not a problem. Clean out the container. It's good for you.
Next question. Is it okay to use unsalted chicken broth, no additional ingredients on dry food to encourage interest?
I would be concerned about the food that you're feeding the animal. We always want to feed something they're going to eat well and eat willingly. So if you're having to start doctoring it, then maybe we need to look at what your base diet is. It's not a problem to add that in, but you need to ask why. The same thing, when you drink coffee. Do you drink your coffee black, hot, straight up? Or do you need to start adding sugar and creamers and, flavorings and all this other stuff in there? That when with coffee, we know why everybody's drinking coffee, right? You're looking for the caffeine. You're not looking for the sugar or the lactose or any of those other things that are going into it. It just makes it more palatable.
And sudden disinterest in eating, or if they're waning on appetite, that's kind of some, not necessarily red flags, but definitely maybe some orange flags that you might want to then consider a trip to the vet and go over that. Because if you're having to doctor the food that they've normally been eating, that sometimes can indicate there's might be something brewing that you want to get checked out.
With one caveat, animals do a much better job at training us than we do at training them. That if that dog has learned, let me look at mom, let me look at the food, let me look sad, and she's going to add something to it. Dogs and cats can be very manipulative, just like toddlers, same outcome. That make sure that you talk to your veterinary team if there's a change in intake behavior, increase, decrease, disinterest, whatever. Rule out a medical issue before you start addressing behavioral.
And I was going to ask you, so I know I have a senior dog, Tremont, and so Tremont has always gotten, after a walk, just a little bit of canned dog food, which I've always considered kind of the junk food, even if I'm buying Purina Pro Plan.
No, as long as if it's a complete balance, that's fine. That's fine. Not a problem. And if he thinks he's getting a treat and you know it's complete and balanced, then it's a win-win. That not a problem. Depending on what you are feeding, there is nutritionally no advantage over feeding canned food or dry food. Animals get fixed taste preferences. Cats will get, we call it mouthfeel, that they will pick up that kibble, roll around in their mouth, and if it's not the right shape, what they're used to, they will spit it out. And when we change foods abruptly, some cats, some dogs are very adaptable. Others, not happening. That if you want to, feed some of the calories as canned food and some of the calories as dry food, as long as they've gone through feeding trials, meet WSAVA guidelines, not a problem. Especially sometimes with our older animals, especially when we warm up canned foods, it releases more of the smell, and that will stimulate their appetite. Just like, how much do you want to eat when you're all stuffed up because you have a cold? Even if you don't feel bad, you don't really, if you can't taste it, you just don't want to do it. Any of you that have got long COVID and maybe you're getting your taste back, maybe it's coming back weird. I've had a couple of friends that have they couldn't eat certain things just because it tasted weird. So yeah, if you want to feed canned food, feed canned food. If you want to feed dry food and the animal accepts it and eats it willingly, then fine. If you want to mix them, that's great. Not a problem. And if he thinks he's hitting a treat when he's really not, then that's even better.
If you guys have questions, please feel free to type them in the Q&A. I wanted you, Anne, to touch a little bit because we had a couple questions, including my own two pets that have food allergies. And maybe it seems to be that we're seeing an increase in that a lot. And no, we're not seeing.
I think it's increased recognition. Plus, I think we have more cats and dogs than we've ever had before. We are getting certain purebreds. Like I said, I live in Detroit. Pit bulls are notorious for food allergies, but they also get environmental allergies. You get a white pit, it's allergic to everything in the world. That is just part of the pit bull genome at this point in time. But I think we just have more dogs, and we've got people that are paying more attention to them. 20 years ago, your dog lost a bunch of hair, maybe wasn't eating real good. Yeah, we'll see the vet in a couple months. We're getting more veterinary visits. We're getting more wellness care. That I think marketing is telling us that we're seeing more allergies. That is not what we're seeing in the clinic, where we can document. For documenting allergies, you need to do an endoscopy or an exploratory surgery, full thickness biopsies. That's what you need to diagnose it. You can also do elimination trials, which are really hard to do in multi-pet households because the animals have an amazing ability to find that one kibble that the cat stashed under the couch and hoover that up. That with an elimination trial, just like with a person, remove, they're going to put you on. I had one friend that was put on, what is it, ostrich and oat or something like that diet for her coon hounds. And apparently cooked ostrich smells really, really bad in the refrigerator. I don't know if that's what I was told. We do have therapeutic diets that can be used as a preliminary treatment while we're trying to rule things in and out. And then once everything's under control on the therapeutic diet, then we start introducing things and say, does this bother you? Oh, no, okay. Does this bother you? Most people don't want to go back to the animal that's itchy and scooting and ear problems. So a lot of times once we start a therapeutic diet, they're on that for the rest of their life because they're controlled. A lot of the allergies we see in animals are environmental. They can be allergic to dust mites. They can be allergic to cats. They can be allergic to rats and rabbits. They can be allergic to trees and pollens. That can, if you've got an existing food allergy that's low grade, and then you add the environmental component on, that can just blow everything up. Changing to a therapeutic diet will get the food allergy component, but will not address the environmental component. So that's when we start getting to the cyclosporins and the atopicas and those environmental things. So it's usually multifactorial. Therapeutic diets are the go-to. Those are the only ones that are going to be restricted enough. There is no over-the-counter foods through multiple testings that have been restricted enough for a true food allergy.
Next question, wanting to clarify for a cat, is it okay to eat only dry food? He's 4 and very healthy.
If that's what he likes, cats especially get very fixated on mouthfeel. So as long as the kibble is the right shape and they eat it well, they don't have to have canned food. My 5 adult cats split one of the 3-ounce cans 5 ways once a day. That is their little teaspoon of canned food. That's all they get as far as canned food. Everything else, I use feeding puzzles. So my cats do not eat out of bowls. They have to work for every kibble they get, whether it is through a spiral toy, whether it's through a cup toy, everything. And that cuts down, it doesn't eliminate. I don't think anything can eliminate the scarf and barf. So they inhale their food, turn right around and puke on your rug. They aim for the rug. That is intentional. But if the animal's happy with dry food, that's fine, as long as it's complete and balanced and follows WSAPA guidelines. Not a problem.
And I think that wraps up any questions. Last chance.
Okay, be really careful. We're not covering treats in this talk, but it is part of pet food. Be really careful with the animal part treats that you're feeding. So the pig snouts, the cow's ears, the cow hooves, the tracheas, all of those things. Most of them are made outside the United States. We don't know what the processing methods are. And we've had significant problems with E. coli and listeria and salmonella infections coming in for those. But also the horns and the hooves and things, we get slab fractures of the teeth because of just the jaw force and how hard those things are. With the little dogs, I can't tell you how gross a bully stick is that has been in a Shih Tzu esophagus for 3 days. Exceptionally gross. I would be really, really careful about feeding any of those kind of treats. The little biscuit treats, the chewy treats, those things, as long as they're not more than 10%, we're great. But all of those animal parts can cause some significant problems. So I would be very, very wary of feeding them.
And I wanted to ask you, so early on in the talk, you gave resources about picking good pet food. So if someone is currently using one product and they want to transition to a new one, do you have any tips on transitioning?
Usually we will recommend 7 to 10 day transition. And what I like to do, 3/4 of the old diet, 1/4 of the new diet, do that for 2 days. Everything is still okay. We're going to go half and half. We're going to do that for another 2 or 3 days. Everything's still okay. If it isn't, we're going to go back to what it was before, do that for a couple more days, and then try. We're on about day 5 now. We're going to go 3/4 of the new diet, 1/4 of the old diet. Another couple days. Everything's still okay. By the time we get to, day 7 to 10, we're going to do 100% of the new diet should be fine. If at any point you have a problem with the transition, the animal won't eat it, we've got diarrhea, we've got some vomiting, go back to where they were fine and then try it again. Some diet transitions, especially with our therapeutic diets, which tend to be less palatable, because, yeah, who wants to eat chicken soup when you can, have chicken breast? It can take 30 days or more to do some of our diet transitions. So I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate everybody's getting to see my beautiful cat. Any questions come up, if you have any questions about going to the websites, with talking with your veterinary team, always refer to your veterinary team before making any, big decisions as to your animal's diet, because they're the ones that have the most training and, other than you, the biggest interest in your animal's welfare.
Thank you so much, Anne. This was fabulous as always. And you're just such this amazing wealth of information. I learned something new every time I hear you.
You learn to not feel guilty about that puppuccino, that Anne's not going to treat shame you. My cats get treats. They've associated treats with me doing laundry. So every time they hear the washer or the dryer, I have 4 cats lined up going, what are we going to get? And one of my cats, he wants you to throw the treat. So I'm sure my husband puts his slippers on that are underneath the table periodically, and there is a cat treat in his slipper, because my aim is not real good. But yeah, my cats associate laundry with treats. I'm glad somebody does.
Well, thank you again. And thank you guys for joining us this morning. We really appreciate y'all supporting the program and attending these and listening to us. So we love it. So thank you.
And I'll see you next month for Backyard Chickens.